So the stats say because women aren't as good negotiators as men, and because we also don't make as much as men, we lose the equivalent of $1 million over our lifetime.
Stop it. Really?
I'm not kidding. I am not kidding. So we, for the business owners out there, ask for what you deserve.
This is the Anthropology Podcast, the podcast where we optimize the bodies, brains, and lifestyles of entrepreneurs, go-getters, and world-changing innovators.
Welcome to the Anthropology Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Walker. As a naturopathic doctor and anthropologist, I optimize the health and performance of badass women working to change the world as entrepreneurs and go-getters. You know, people exactly like you. Your business, body, balance, and inner badass, these are the themes we are exploring. So we're going to talk about business, body, and badass all as one integrated topic today because we are discussing something critical to us as women and as entrepreneurs and as people who want to have an impact in this world, and that is money. We're talking about our own personal management of money, how to start with that, how to lean into it, and frankly, why it's one of the most critical things that we will decide to take ownership of in our entire lives. For far too long, despite us identifying as entrepreneurs, us having our own businesses, far too many women are outsourcing the management of their finances to someone else and their families. And today we're talking about taking back and reclaiming that element of our wealth, of our health, of our business, and our personal empowerment. Joining me in this conversation is my friend, Jackie Porter. And Jackie and I have known each other and have crossed paths with one another over 10 years ago as we were both just starting out our career. Jackie's going to share her own story, but more importantly, her perspective as a financial planner and as a certified financial manager as we delve into why managing money, leaning into the finances of our families and of ourselves is as much a feminist issue as it is about planning for our future. It's a matter of self-worth. It's a matter of absolute importance. And it is my pleasure to introduce you to Jackie Porter. Jackie Porter, welcome to the Anthropology Podcast.
Well, thank you. I love being here. I'm just actually happy to reconnect with you, Megan. I see you're definitely doing boss lady stuff as usual.
Oh, well, that is so kind. We were just saying before we got into this recording, Jackie and I knew each other like, my gosh, we probably crossed paths, I'm going to say 10 years ago.
You're aging me to your audience, Megan.
I know, but we're like, which is hard to believe because we were like 10, but yeah,
of course.
And we were both earlier in our careers, but where we connected was really a space where driven, successful, visionary women hang out, and so it's no surprise to me that we are crossing paths again. Jackie, share with everybody really who you are and what you are up to in the world, and why you're really so passionate about your work.
Well, I consider myself really a cheerleader. And I say that because I love cheerleading my clients. I love cheerleading the industry, just about the subject of personal finance. It's something that, I kind of stumbled into. I never thought I was going to be a financial planner. For God's sake, I didn't even know that career existed, 24 years ago when I got into the industry. And, I came into the industry as an accidental entrepreneur, and I kind of came into learning about finance accidentally as well. My beginning origin story was that I was raised by a single mom. I, unfortunately lost my mom really close to my 16th birthday. But I had a mom who was making me confident, forcing me to be confident at a really early age. She was always someone who encouraged me to never rely on a man, always have my own money. And she was quite the entrepreneur. And I know I'm talking to an entrepreneurial audience, but, we talked about only, being around now 20 years because, we were 10 when we met first time, Megan. And, the time when I was born and the time I grew up, child labor laws aren't what they are today. So my mother kind of drafted me in all of her side hustles. Whatever she was doing, I kind of was doing by default. And I couldn't complain.
Wait, are we not allowed to do that with our kids? Like, different topic.
Exactly. Another day. I'll come back for that one.
That's right. Circle back.
Therapy sessions. But all of this to say is I didn't realize that she was actually allowing me to build resilience around doing things and getting confidence. So I was doing things at a really early age, like, going to school at 7 by myself, making my lunches, coming home for lunch. And again, I'm dating myself here. For those of you who remember the Flintstones, my mother would say to me, make sure you turn off the TV, the last commercial before the Flintstones is over, put food in the oven, do that, go back to school. I was doing all of those things by myself. And, so when she passed away when I was 16, I didn't realize how she had really prepared me to be on my own. Not she planned to not be there, but she certainly prepared me. So I started to do a lot of adult things, right? I already knew how to live, I already knew how to feel confident on my own. And so I started to pay bills on my own. I moved in with a girlfriend of mine. We were, paying the bills, putting food on the table, keeping a roof over our heads. And, it's truly only after working 3 jobs through high school and university and finding out about finance after leaving my first full-time job that really my life changed. I had an opportunity to meet a financial advisor who happened to be 2 things at the time that I didn't know made her a unicorn. She was female and she was Black. Which basically, now that I've been in the industry 24 years, I realize that she really was a unicorn. and she was the person I had my very first money conversation with. She talked to me about putting my money to work, employing my money. I've never heard these terms before, like employing my money and putting my money to work. And, how money could work for me. And all of those concepts captured my imagination because you have to understand, as a 16-year-old working 3 jobs and doing all of this craziness, I was really tired by the time I was 26. And I was having this conversation, 10 years later, I was having this conversation with this advisor. So I came into this industry completely out of need because I wanted to know as much as I could about what she was talking about. I'm like, how do I do this? And how do I get into this career? And then, as a result of that, it led me to create my own 7-figure net worth. And I was so financially empowered by going through this process of learning about the industry, getting my licenses, creating my own net worth, that I thought about how many people out there that look like me that potentially never had a money conversation and what a game changer it could be in their lives. And, I just started to think about how I wanted to make a difference for those people as well. And so that's kind of like my foray into the financial literacy world and, just doing the things I do that I'm so grateful and I feel so fortunate to be able to do, which is just really promote financial literacy, both to my clients and just to the industry as a whole.
Well, and it's so powerful that you say that you were given this opportunity to have a money conversation because, it's funny. You have dinner parties with your friends and your girlfriends and every once in a while this conversation comes around. Well, how old were you when your parents had the conversation about the birds and the bees? How awkward was that? And it's funny how we have these moments. I'm going somewhere with this, I promise. But it's funny how we have those moments. And yet I've never heard anyone say, when did you have that conversation with your parents around money mindset and money management? And when did that conversation happen? No one, the closest I ever heard was a girlfriend once was talking to me about managing the debt associated with her wedding. And her parents' advice to her was, well, you know what? It's sort of beautiful that you have a line of credit and you're getting married at the same time because debt is the hallmark of adulthood. And I so clearly remember her sharing that story. And I was like,
ooh, that's
good. That was a different birds and bee conversation than I had. But I think it's so reflective of the truth that our parents don't intentionally talk to us about these pieces or individuals with influence. They just actually dump their own money mindsets and their own financial burdens onto us through their language and their actions and all of these different elements. it's no wonder so many of us are a mess when it comes to this financial piece.
Well, this is it. And we don't learn about money in school. And depending on if you had parents who had a good relationship with money, who had, people around them who were astute, you literally potentially learn their money habits, or you turn away from their money habits. Both could be good or bad, right? It really depends. But yeah, I mean, the reality is that conversation you're talking about, because if we can talk about sex, a very uncomfortable topic, and I feel like society is at a point now where we're getting way more comfortable at the dinner table and leaning into those conversations. Why have we not yet got to that point when it comes to talking about money? And that's one of my missions in life, is to change that, is to really make money a conversation that we have with everyone, our children, our parents, our partners. It's just a natural conversation that we have on a regular basis, so we can continue, because this is one of the issues with women, is we don't feel confident about money. And a part of it is we don't talk about it. And it's something you have to feel familiar with.
Mm-hmm. And the reality is that, I'm coming at this from the lens of a healthcare provider, and we kept really strong statistics and recorded these things in our practice. 80% of our patients cited financial stress as their primary source of stress in their life, followed 100%. By their relationship, right? So this isn't just I'm uncomfortable talking about money. If you are that individual in your house, so you're like, I take ownership of the health of my household, guess what's part of that conversation? The money piece is part of it.
100%. And in this moment when we're dealing with, the pandemic, and people potentially having a lot of regrets around their finances, there's more financial stress with money than there's ever been. So the need to have financial literacy is greater than it's ever been. And I'm talking basic stuff. And, my industry is guilty of not having the basic financial literacy conversations they need to have with people around debt management, right? Because Canadians were carrying record level of debt coming into the pandemic. So we got to start educating people about not just things we want to talk to them about things they need to know around, as I said, debt management, around, saving for retirement, about money management, cash flow management, credit. These are things that I have conversations with people constantly is, what's my credit score? Because, we were talking before we started this talk about leveraging. And, if I'm going to talk to you about a wealth tip, understanding how you can multiply your money versus adding or subtracting your money is one of the most powerful things women can do. Is how do I multiply my money? Well, leveraging allows you to do that because you get to do one of the rules of building wealth, which is OPM, I call it, other people's money. So are you down with OPM, other people's money? You need to have good credit in order to be down with OPM.
I'm down with OPM.
Right? Are you down with OPM?
I like the idea of investing other people's
yes,
money.
Because what do we do when we buy a property, right? We use other people's money. I think my one of my clients said to me one day when they were like talking about paying off their home and they felt really good about it. They said, before this, it was the bank's house.
Right.
I finally can say it's completely my house now. It's no longer the bank's house.
Right. And it's funny, like even with my mortgage, I don't begrudge paying my mortgage. Like every single time I do it, like just energetically, I stop and I'm like, okay, great. I'm investing in my future. And
that's it.
And it's a different mindset, this idea of wealth building. And I find even the evolution of conversation, like eventually we can get comfortable talking about money, but then we throw down the word wealth and it's like, oh, whoa. Like I don't want to go there. So I want to back up, Jackie, because you said you referenced this notion that, even the fundamentals, we're so guilty of not sharing that. If we were to like just back right up, what are some of those fundamentals that you're like, I just want women to know about this. I want you to have a handle on these pieces. You need to know whoever the primary breadwinner is in a family, doesn't matter. You need to know these pieces.
No, 100%, because here's the other thing that women need to understand. We don't feel confident about money. It might lead us to avoid dealing with money or having the money conversation, but realize that at some point in our lives, we're going to have to be making financial decisions on our own because we live longer than men. We live 4 years longer than men. So at some point, we're going to be faced with making decisions around money, and we need to build our confidence. There's just no way around it. So rather than suddenly having to make those money decisions, feeling not confident, why not embrace the money conversation and lean into just picking up one nugget each year, each month on what's an area of finance that I want to feel more confident around. Is it debt management? Is it the stock market? Is it home buying? Whatever it is, commit to that. But, as I said, some of the fundamental things that I think people need to understand is, some of the things around debt management. Like, I find, especially in the pandemic, if people feel like they didn't really take good care of, their money management, they didn't stay on top of what was going on with their, how much debt they have, now's the time to put all of those statements or all of those bills that you have that you might be making minimum payments on. Now's the time to open them up. And let's have a closer look at what those statements say. How much interest are you paying? Because I have these conversations constantly with clients, and it doesn't matter how much they earn. I'm like, okay, let's talk about your credit cards. How much interest are you paying on them? Do you know what the average answer on that question is? I don't know.
Right.
How much interest are you paying on your line of credit, your credit cards? Often they seem to know what they're paying on their homes. But if I ask about credit cards, loans, or lines of credit, I get a blank stare.
Right.
So, and so if you don't know how much interest you're paying on your credit cards, because here's the thing, if we're talking about this concept of leveraging, let's talk about this one rule that's a game changer called the rule of 72, which is divide any interest rate by 72, and it'll tell you how long it takes you to pay that debt off if you're making just the minimum payments. So 10% is already 7.2 years.
Right.
Double that, that's 14.4 years, right? That's what you want to earn in an investment. That's not what you want to pay in interest.
Yeah. You want to earn that on the opposite side of the line.
Exactly. On the opposite side of the balance sheet. So
Yeah.
if you're not paying attention, if you've, it's another month that's gone by in the pandemic and you're like, oh my God, I didn't, now I'm looking at my debt. I want to deal with it. I'm just going to put this in a drawer. I'm going to come back to it. I know I have enough in the bank to make the minimum payment. What's that costing you when it comes to your future?
Right.
How is that undermining the future you want to build? Because I just finished saying women live longer. We live 4 years longer than men. We also take much more time out for unpaid work, like having children, doing household tasks. We also don't make as much as men. So the stats say because women aren't as good negotiators as men, and because we also don't make as much as men, we lose the equivalent of $1 million over our lifetime.
Stop it.
I'm
Really?
not kidding. I am not kidding. So we, for the business owners out there, ask for what you deserve. And I'm guilty of it too. I have to check myself because it's easy to just go, oh, just charge me. What do you think you should charge? Well, no. First of all, money conversations with your peers are helpful.
Yeah.
Find out what other people in your industry are charging and try to charge at that level or more.
I was like, except my industry, because everyone undercharges.
This is what I'm saying. This is exactly what I'm saying. But if you're undercharging, that means everybody's at risk.
Yes.
Right? Everybody's making less.
Yes. And the sustainability is at risk.
People. This is a money conversation to have. I mean, stats show at law firms, these are some of the things I've seen at law firms, a female partner is not making the same as a male partner, but guess what? Nobody talks about it.
Right.
What if you knew you had a conversation about, they don't want you to do that. They don't want you to have conversations about what each of you are making, because then you can come back and say, listen, I need to be making more. This is terrible. We're doing the exact same job. I'm not prepared to lose $1 million in my lifetime if I know I make less, I do more of the unpaid work, and I live longer. How does that benefit me?
Right. Absolutely. And we were talking about this before, this idea of, and I'm just going to say so many women, men feel the same way, but there's so many women who are like, this is such a lovely conversation you two are having, but I just want to help people. Like, I don't want to have to talk about money. I just want to help people. And so last year I ran a live event for my industry, and it was regulated practitioners. And my opening question to them that morning was, I want you to outline for me in your handout, what your philanthropic goals are for this year.
I love that.
And they stared at me. Everyone stared at me. They're like, maybe I'm in the wrong room. Like, I'm not there yet. And I said, here's the thing is that we do this outsourcing of philanthropy to like, it's wealthy white 65-year-old men who are philanthropists. It's not me. We don't self-identify that way. And these individuals who are like, I just want to help people. Like, I don't want to have this conversation. I just want to help people. I mean, you just spoke to this. $1 million of lost wealth in your lifetime. Imagine the impact you could have on your family, on your future, on your community.
On your community, yes, absolutely.
Like, we need women with this intention, with money and agency. We don't need to outsource this to men.
No, we don't. And it's so interesting that you say that, because all of a sudden I had this flashback. Megan, you kind of brought me back. I feel like we're in this therapy session together.
I know. Yeah, welcome to our therapy session, everyone.
You brought me back to being, a teenager and, canvassing, because my mother passed away of stomach cancer. And I remember canvassing for the Canadian Cancer Society because I knew how hard it was as a person of color who was on my own so young and just relying on the kindness of others so many times. I knew what that was like. And I kept thinking throughout my childhood, I want to be a philanthropist. That's really what I want to do. I want to be that person who lunches and hands big checks to organizations. Mm-hmm. That's what I remember saying to myself. I have no idea how I was going to get there, but that's what I kept saying to myself because I know how hard this life is. And I want to make it easier for somebody in my position. And I think every single woman out there has the capacity to do that. I swear to you, I'm not special. I'm really not. I have such few skills. But I do know that I was passionate about being secure about my future and protecting others in the same situation as me. And that was something that drove me. So I've been, I did work for Gilda's Club, the Canadian Cancer Society, for many, many years. And I, have a check that I want to write to organizations like that in my mind, more so than what I do, as I continue to progress in my career. And if those are the things that are driving the women in your audience, know that you have the capacity to do that if you grow your own wealth. And like I said, because women tend to, this is the other rule. So this is rule number 2, understand the power of 72. So you're not losing that money to interest and giving it to somebody else, you're giving it to yourself.
Right.
And then the second rule is then start to look at how you can invest, not save, because women have this propensity to look for security, often because advisors don't make the effort to explain what they need to understand about what they're investing in. And it's your money, so you'd have the right, if you're working with someone, to dig deep and say, give me best and worst case scenarios, show me history, explain to me how this is going to give me financial security over the long term. These are answers you deserve, right? So having the ability to invest, not save, is that opportunity to multiply your wealth, which we need to do because we need our wealth to grow above inflation, right? Which is 3% or 2%, which is basically saying, 10 years from now, the cost of bread isn't going to be what it is now. We know, I was talking to a client yesterday who said he bought a house in the early 2000s, I think it was 2001, for a condo for $176,000. I was like, what?
Wow.
You bought a condo for $176,000?
Yeah.
That was back in late 90s, 2000. It's 20 years later, the condo is worth $600,000. So if your money doesn't grow, like sometimes it feels good to look at your investments and see things not changing so much until it's 20 years later. Right. And then you're panicking. Right. Because things haven't changed much. It still looks the same because everything else is costing a lot and your money is still the same value. So you need for your money to multiply, not just add.
Right.
Because then when it multiplies, you have a bigger pool of cash that you can live on.
And it needs to be like, and it's so subtle, but you're like your money, not your husband's money or your partner's money. It's your money too. And you mentioned this, you're like, women want this security. And as you were doing that, I wrote down this question, which is, are you outsourcing your security?
That's right. And that's a very good question because, again, I wrote a book on the subject called Single by Choice or Chance. And the women who expect that at some point they're going to have to manage their finances alone in the future, not because they're going to be by themselves, but they expect to be single from a financial perspective, they expect to take ownership of the finances, then they actually do better than the women who become suddenly single because they, their spouse leaves or dies. Here's the thing that women need to know, and that the industry needs to do a better job of. There's not as many people as you think retiring on the beach together, right? The fastest rising group of divorcees are seniors. Right. So if you think that you can count on, and I'm not saying, everybody's relationships aren't perfect and what have you, but if you think, and you're not planning to at least be in a position to understand where your money is going and what decisions are being made about your money, if you're not the person doing that right now, if you're outsourcing, if you aren't prepared to make those decisions, if you have to do it yourself, is it going to put you in financial peril? Because I do a lot of work in the divorce space, and I talk to women who didn't know that their husband was, for example, putting them through a scenario where they're being financially abused, making wildly irresponsible decisions with the money that they had, that they were in way more debt than they thought, or they simply in a divorce had no idea where the money was because they never stayed on top of it.
Right. No, absolutely.
So women, you cannot afford to be that woman. If you're not the person who's making the decisions, you still need to know what's going on in your household. You still need to understand the decisions that are being made, because women are also, as I said, the biggest recipients of financial abuse.
And it is an energetic exchange to hold control entirely around that financial piece.
100%. And the less you know, the more vulnerable you are. Right now with, as I said, with the pandemic going on, there's so many more women, especially because there's not as much community support, and there are people together in very precarious circumstances who are also at more risk because of this pandemic of being financially abused or domestically abused.
Absolutely. I actually think this idea of outsourcing our security is a fundamental issue of feminism and women's rights.
100%. So I think, with every cloud, there's a silver lining. So there's truly an opportunity right now for women to decide, because I think that's, I would say, number 3, right, is decide that you are prepared to lean into financial confidence. Because you know what? Here's the thing. I'm in finance. I'm a cheerleader. I'm constantly having to update my financial information because things are changing all the time to keep my licenses. I have a number of designations. I'm currently pursuing another designation. Having said all of that, I feel like I'm still scratching the surface of all there is to know in the financial industry. So that's why I continue to commit myself to learning more, so I can continue to be in the best position to educate my clients. So you just have to decide, okay, each year, each month, I'm prepared to take on a little bit more information about finance. Work with your advisor to get a recommended reading list of things that you could read to improve your financial literacy. But all I'm saying is, don't feel like you need to know everything overnight, and definitely don't work with advisors that make you feel ashamed for not knowing. Again, outsourcing your money to somebody else, it's your money. You still need to know what's going on, whether we're talking about your spouse or we're talking about working with an advisor. It's your money, and you need to work with somebody that you can have uncomfortable conversations with about money, so that they're in a position to truly help you.
Where would you recommend people start in terms of really starting to develop a vocabulary around money and a different level of respect and frankly interest around money? Do you have some good readings or sites, or where would you suggest they start?
Yeah, I think, one of my favorite books right now for recommending to clients, especially business women, is the Badass series. Have you heard of the Badass series?
Yeah.
I love the Badass series. So the book, You're a Badass at Making Money, is a fantastic resource. And it's also very motivational because, what I love about, that writer is she actually, like me, feels that money doesn't need to be boring. Right? Talking about money doesn't need to be boring. I actually feel that money is a very interesting conversation to have, right?
Yes.
So I love the fact that she injects stories. She invests, she's very motivating. She's funny. And I think, that's what makes the series such a great series.
Yeah, I like that one. I like the Get Rich Lucky Bitch.
I don't know that one, actually.
Oh yeah, Denise Dunfield. She's really great. Similar vein. And one of the books that actually was really influential on me when I was younger, and it was given to me by my dad, was Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yes, I love Rich Dad Poor Dad. That's one of the other ones I would recommend. So Rich Dad Poor Dad is a fantastic one. I'll send you as well my recommended reading list because I have a library. I also like Smart. I like actually this series, The Millionaire Next Door, because it's the secret of millionaires. I don't know if you've seen
David
that
Bach,
one.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
The Millionaire Next Door is a great one because it talks about those really basic principles of money that, I don't think we talk about enough. And it's really the secrets, the principles of the truly wealthy. Because I think what we see as wealth is very different than what wealth really looks like. And I can tell you that firsthand because, working with wealthy clients, when I just started my career, I just remember going to really beautiful homes in Rosedale and thinking, wow, this is going to be a really great client to work with. And then I would look under the hood, the financial hood, shall we say, and realize a lot of those people, Megan, are actually broke. They have no money because they're living really above their means. So, money management is crucial as well. So, I think this is a really big opportunity when you're talking to me about some of the tips. This is a really big opportunity for, people like your audience to take a good look at where they're spending their money. Because this is another question I ask people all the time. I'm like, so how much does it cost you to live a month? Most people have no idea. And it's important to do the math because sometimes, especially in this moment, like there's this tendency to click for comfort, and clicking for comfort might mean, we go on Amazon because, Amazon's a store open 24 hours a day. And we buy something that makes us feel good in the moment, or we'll, Uber Eats is just a click away. You could just buy something and that's next thing it's on your credit card and, you do it in the moment and then potentially regret it later. And then you don't, because it's, comes off your credit card, you're not really tracking it. Mm-hmm. And it just starts to, it starts to balloon more and more. It just keeps going up. And then you kind of lose track. And then it's almost like, it's kind of to me the equivalent of you're trying to be good when you're on a diet, and then all of a sudden you just start like you get to that day and you kind of lose control, and then things just go down the hill from there. I'm speaking for a friend, obviously.
I know. Well, speaking for friends is really important and done frequently in the context of this podcast. And it's true because the purchasing, like the little buzz you get after you've been shopping for a day, that's dopamine. And dopamine's this anticipatory neurotransmitter. Here's the other place that I'm a dopamine junkie. So I have to watch myself that I don't get it from shopping because it's easy. It's a low-hanging fruit to access it.
It is.
But here's the other place where I get it. I log into my Questrade account and I look at my investment. So like I do the research, I pick those pieces, and that's not where I have all of my money, but I actually like having a little bit of control over those elements. I'm not day trading. I'm not driving a race car through my finances, but I've picked some things that I just like hold over the long term, and I know them really well, and I'm empowered by it. But logging in and looking at that and looking at this uptick or managing the downtick, I'm like, that's as exciting to me as going shopping. But it took some time. It took some time to learn that and get comfortable with that. And but it's way more empowering. It's way more empowering than spending your money.
100%. And like I said, that's the danger of just clicking without doing the math and not having any sense of where your money is going is you lose control. And maybe when you add up where your money went for the month and you have all these worries about the things you really want, like financial security, getting rid of debt, having money for the future, maybe saving for a vacation or for something else that you really care about, helping your family, you don't have the money because you clicked for comfort and lost track.
Right.
So I think that's really important. The last thing I was going to say is, we were talking about making an impact and leaving a legacy. Women, because we live longer, are often the ones who will pass on our wealth. But yet many of us don't have a will. So where will our money go if, again, we leave it to other people to decide, like the province? So, you kind of have to consider, like, be intentional about what you want to happen to your money, whether we're talking about now or we're talking about after you've gone. And so, because that's your final opportunity to actually have control about where your money goes and what happens to it.
Yeah, it's such powerful advice. And probably if we started to list out all these things, here are the 10 things that we can start to do to gain control over that financial independence. And absolutely have a will would be one of them.
Yes. And the other one would be, because we live longer, we're more likely, and you're in the health field, we're more likely to have a healthcare issue later in our lives. So if we don't have a will and we don't have a power of attorney for care, then who makes decisions about what happens to us, how we want to live, the last days of our lives? What type of, advanced care decisions do we want? Are we going to leave that burden on other people? Do we want to make those decisions ourselves?
Absolutely.
Because chances are somebody else is going to have to make decisions about our care if we don't.
This is so taking solid.
Control and embracing, the future we want, I think is exciting. And this all came to me, really because I was forced in that scenario. Mm-hmm. And, there's such a thing that, and I'm trying to remember the name of the author now, but it's like the 10,000 hours. I feel like because I've been given so many more hours.
Yeah.
What's his name? Malcolm Gladwell.
It's
forced me to stretch my resilience muscle. And that's really the thing is, but you have to decide you want to start stretching your resilience muscle today. Mm-hmm. And it'll continue to build. That's really the only thing I have on anyone else is I've had to do it longer.
Right. And when we make that courageous decision and we lean in and a commitment to learn something, we gain competence over time, which results in confidence. I talk about this notion, and I talk about this all the time. And if you're that person in your household, you're like, I manage the health of my household, then a huge part of that is also understanding the wealth of your household. And I just want to share a story because as you're talking about this and this notion of, being an empowered woman, we had this family friend, and she was this older lady, and she had 2 lovely children. And when she was young, she was a model in New York, and she met her husband, who was a lawyer. They moved back to Toronto. And she had 2 very young kids, like under the age of 6, and he passed away suddenly from a heart attack. And so she had no financial education, and suddenly was managing this estate. And she just took it upon herself. She's like, I'm not going to be that woman. And over the years, she educated herself sufficiently. She had invested all of her own money. She was that sweet little old lady at the shareholder meeting in the front row year after year. When this woman passed away, she left this massive estate to her children, like tens of millions of dollars of self-managed funds. It went to her kids, it went to charities, like the financial legacy that she left, because she made a decision, and you alluded to this before, that it really is about a decision to say, listen, I'm actually going to take responsibility for this piece. I'm going to learn about it. I'm going to acknowledge the hard stuff. But it really is an incredibly empowering step that you can take as an individual. And in particular, I think it is a powerful step to take as a woman.
I love that story because, ultimately I had to learn the hard way, the more painful way. And I'm just encouraging all of the listeners that you have on this podcast to just decide, just as you said, because the opportunity to create that kind of money memory for your children, them seeing you in a powerful way, seeing you taking on the reins of your own finances. Just think about how powerful that is, because one of the reasons as well, when women actually have money conversations, they decide that they want to be the change they're looking for. Really good things happen in a family. It models that for their children as well, because seeing my mother as an independent woman, made it easier for me to take on this role so young. So I'm going to encourage all the women out there that they have all that they need to do the same. They just have to make that decision.
So beautifully put, and a perfect place to transition our interview. So on the back half of the interview, Jackie, I have a series of questions that I call our KPIs, or key performance indicators. So just like we have them in our businesses, I believe that we have them in how we live our lives as well. So I've got a few questions coming your way. You ready?
Sure. Sounds like fun.
What's the most impactful book that you have read during the pandemic?
You know what? I just finished Michelle Obama's book, Becoming. And honestly, she has such an inspirational story. And I related to her story on so many levels about growing up, with hardship and not feeling like she was special in any way, but just putting in the work. And that all of those things were also accessible to everyone else. I just loved her story.
What is the one thing you're most consistent with respect to your health?
I think the thing I'm most consistent with is I need to move my body. I think, and this again is because of our therapy session, I feel like I can tell you anything at this point, Megan.
There's people listening, right?
Yes, of course. I feel like, one of the things I need, because I have all this, I'm this pent up energy, I have to move my body. I literally feel the difference, like my mental health, when I don't move my body, when I don't exercise, go for a walk, do something that it really impacts my mental health. So exercise, being in nature is crucial. I have to fit that in. And that's the appointment I make with myself, especially now when it's even harder. It's like the challenge I have to do. So it's like waking up at the same time every day so I can go for a walk or go to the gym. These days it's going for a walk.
Right, exactly. What is something totally badass about you that people would not otherwise know?
Something badass about me that people wouldn't otherwise know is I took a course actually at the Comedy Store. We don't call it the Comedy Store here. We call it something else. Yuck Yucks. I took a stand-up course at Yuck Yucks.
Stop.
I am so not kidding. It was the most frightening thing I've ever done. And I planned to do more when the pandemic happened, but you know what? It was my foray, I would say my serious foray into public speaking. And again, it was when I decided that I was going to become a public speaker for real, is I thought, okay, I might as well go potentially get heckled. I mean, this was just the courses, right? But just having all the people in that course who every single time I did it, I felt like I was going to have a heart attack, but I did it anyway. And it was an exhilarating course, just learning everything I could about, because when you start doing comedy, you first thing you do is storytelling and improvisation. And so it was amazing.
Okay, so that answer is right up there with the person who told me that they're like, I would like to mountain bike. And I was thinking, okay, that's great. And they're like, on a unicycle. And I was like, what? Yeah, that was pretty awesome. What do you do for fun or play?
What do I do for fun or play? So another crazy thing that I like to do that I can't really do as much as travel. I actually really like visiting, and this is kind of crazy, but I really like visiting like people's graves. So I go on grave tours for fun.
Okay.
Because I'm a biography buff. I love biographies. And, if you go on grave tours, you get to hear about famous or not so famous people in a cemetery and what they did and their legacy. And I've heard some amazing stories. Mount Pleasant used to do grave tours. And, I learned about, the Eatons. I'm trying to remember the person, the famous piano player from Canada. I can't think of his name right now, but I learned his story. These two sisters who were, wanted to be buried together. I learned about just so many amazing people stories. And you just think about the beautiful footprint that people leave behind when they pass away, especially if they choose to. That's
really lovely. And finally for you, entrepreneurism. Are we born this way or do we learn to become entrepreneurs?
Nature, nurture. You know what? I don't know. That's a really good question. I feel like if I think about my own foray into entrepreneurship, I was always kind of learning. I think for my particular case, I think it could go either way. I think I was exposed to entrepreneurship early by my mother, as I had said to you, those that drafting into the side hustle that I didn't have anything to do with. And really, again, it was kind of like something that I learned and started to realize that I could do. Because she showed me, it made me realize I could do it. And because I had to work 3 jobs, for most of my university and high school, I started to realize if I could work this hard for other people and then have to pay the taxes, for all of you out there who know what it's like to have to pay taxes when you work a few jobs, I thought, geez, I can actually have the confidence to do it myself because I was already working for myself in so many ways.
Jackie, it has been such a pleasure hanging out with you today. Where can we send people to learn more about the work that you are putting out into the world?
Well, feel free to visit my website. We actually have a 1-minute quiz that you can do for yourself to test your financial IQ. It's actually called, what's your financial IQ? And so you can kind of see where your gaps are in your current finances, where you might want to learn. And then if you are interested, we offer a 30-minute consultation, free consultation, with a member of my team to give you strategies you can walk away with, right away to improve your financial literacy and improve your financial confidence.
Amazing. I love it. We're going to hook everyone up with all of these elements in our show notes. Jackie Porter, it is a pleasure as always to cross paths with you.
Oh, this has been fun, Megan. Thank you for all of the therapy advice.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful rest of the day.
I hope you had as much fun as I did exploring this topic today with Jackie. I know for those of you who have hung out with me on this podcast for a long period of time, that conversations related to money and responsibility and intrigue around this idea of us building intergenerational wealth and philanthropy as women is something that's really important to me. I love hanging out with like-minded women, and we hang out over in the Anthropology Collective Facebook group. If you want to be around women who represent your future self, your bigger self, your impactful self, I encourage you to come and hang out with us in that group. I will be back here next week as we delve into more topics related to the amplification of your business, health, and inner badass. Until next Tuesday, I'm Dr. Megan Walker.